Everything you've ever learned about Roman gladiators is likely wrong. The tales you've heard of slaves brutalized and broken, forced to fight to the death for the fleeting amusement of a bloodthirsty crowd, are but a shadow of the truth. What if I told you some of these men were more than warriors? They were legends in their own time, cunning entrepreneurs and brilliant tacticians, men who, from the heart of the arena, shaped the very soul of the Roman Empire. Picture this. A man, wrists bound in rusted chains, sold like cattle amid the dust and clamor of Rome's markets. A Thracian, a stranger in a hostile land, stripped of all but his will to survive. No one could have foreseen that this man would rise to shake the foundations of the mightiest empire the world had ever known. His name? Spartacus. Over the next 25 minutes, we'll peel back the layers of myth and misconception, unraveling the untold truths of 7 of the most legendary gladiators in Roman history. You'll meet the fighter who defied freedom's call not once, but 4 times, choosing the roar of the crowd over a quiet life. You'll stand in awe of the beast slayer, a man who stared down lions and slew them with nothing but his bare hands and unyielding courage. And you'll witness the madness of an emperor who bankrupted Rome itself, all to step into the arena and play the part of a gladiator. But this is no mere chronicle of blood and battles. This is a masterclass in strategy, leadership, and the raw power of human transformation. For behind every clash in the Colosseum's sun-scorched sands lay a deeper truth, a lesson about power, ambition, and the cost of glory. Spartacus, the flame of defiance. We begin with Spartacus, the Thracian whose name became a thunderclap across the empire. Torn from his homeland, chained and humiliated, he was no mere slave in the arena. A tactician of rare genius, he forged a rebellion that brought Rome to its knees. But what drove him? Was it vengeance, a dream of freedom, or a secret buried deep within his warrior's heart? His story is one of fire and fury, a spark that nearly burned an empire to ash. Crixus, the unbroken soul. Next, meet Crixus, the indomitable Gaul, a gladiator so fierce that Rome offered him freedom 4 times. And 4 times he turned it away. Why would a man cling to chains when liberty beckoned? Was it the thrill of the arena, the adoration of the masses, or a hidden vow that bound him to a fate of steel and sand? His tale is a storm of honor, sacrifice, and a mystery that will haunt you long after the final blow. Priscus and Verus, brothers in blood. Then the saga of Priscus and Verus, 2 comrades bound by loyalty, forced to face each other in a duel to the death. For hours they clashed under the relentless sun, their swords flashing, the crowd holding its breath. What happened next stunned Rome and redefined brotherhood itself. What forged their bond? What desperate choice spared them from a tragic end? Carpophorus, the tamer of beasts. Behold Carpophorus, the beast slayer, a man who wrestled lions, bears, and rhinos with nothing but his hands and a heart of iron. He was no mere fighter. He was a legend, a force of nature that left the Colosseum in awe. Yet behind his triumphs lurked a shadow, a personal tragedy that drove him to face death again and again. What ghosts haunted this titan of the arena? Commodus, the emperor's folly. And then the strangest of all, Commodus, the emperor who traded the throne for the sword. He bankrupted Rome not for conquest but to chase glory in the arena. Was he a madman, a dreamer, or a ruler desperate to prove himself to a people who feared rather than loved him? His descent into the Colosseum is a tale of obsession, power, and a legacy stained with blood. A legacy beyond the arenas. This is not just a story of combat and carnage. It's a journey through the minds of men who mastered strategy, wielded leadership like a blade, and transformed themselves in the crucible of the Colosseum. Each fight was a battle for more than survival. It was a struggle for power, for meaning, for a chance to defy fate itself. The secret Rome buried. But there's more, a whisper of a secret, a pact between gladiators and senators, a conspiracy so dangerous that Rome buried it beneath the sands of time. What did they hide? What truth teeters on the edge of revelation, waiting to upend everything we thought we knew? Join me on this epic 25-minute odyssey where every chapter challenges the Hollywood cliches and unearths a story history nearly forgot. Will Spartacus triumph against impossible odds? What drove Crixus to his final, fateful stand? And the secret of the Colosseum, will it be unveiled or lost forever in the echoes of the past? Step into the arena, brave listener, and prepare to be captivated. Because once you enter, the only way out is through the truth. For centuries, popular culture has painted a grim, one-dimensional portrait of Roman gladiators. Expendable slaves, dragged into blood-soaked sandpits, handed a sword, and commanded to die for the fleeting applause of a ruthless crowd. But this, dear reader, is not even close to the full story. Yes, many began their journey in chains, torn from distant lands, their freedom stripped away. Yet the Colosseum was no mere slaughterhouse. It was a crucible of opportunity, a stage where the brave and the cunning could rise from the ashes of captivity to seize unimaginable wealth and influence. The most celebrated gladiators were not pitiable wretches, broken and discarded. They were powerful, larger-than-life figures who captivated the hearts of Rome. These warriors earned appearance fees that dwarfed the annual wages of the empire's soldiers, amassing fortunes that would rival millions in today's coin. Their faces adorned pottery, their victories immortalized on the walls of taverns and villas, their names emblazoned on merchandise peddled across the sprawling empire. They weren't just fighters, they were icons, the rock stars of their age, cheered by thousands who wagered fortunes on their skill and valor. But their story goes deeper. These men were not mere puppets of the arena. The savviest among them controlled their image, negotiated shrewd contracts, and astonishingly, ran thriving businesses from within the very training schools that once bound them. Let that sink in. A man, once a chained slave, could rise to eclipse the wealth of the senators who sat in the stands, gazing down in awe. The crowd didn't see a man in rags, they beheld a warrior, a titan worth staking empires upon. This was no simple tale of survival. It was a saga of transformation, of men who turned the brutal sands of the Colosseum into a ladder to power. Some even became advisors to the elite, their counsel sought by patricians who once owned them. Others, through grit and charisma, won the hearts of noblewomen, their whispered romances fueling gossip across Rome's marble halls. And if this defies everything you've ever believed, brace yourself, for the next chapter is not about mere triumph. It's about revolution. Enter Spartacus, a name that thunders through history. A Thracian slave turned gladiator, he did not merely fight for glory, he ignited a fire that threatened to consume the empire itself. What drove this man to defy the might of Rome? Was it vengeance, a dream of liberty, or a vision so bold it could reshape the world? Step into this riveting tale, where the line between slave and legend blurs, where the Colosseum's roars echo lessons of power, ambition, and defiance. What secrets did these gladiators guard? How did a chained warrior become a kingmaker in the shadows? And when Spartacus raised his sword, what spark of rebellion lit the hearts of thousands? The answers lie ahead, buried in a story Rome never wanted told. Dare to uncover it, because once you begin, the saga of these gladiators will grip you, leaving you hungry to witness the revolution that awaits. He began as nothing, a prisoner, wrists bound in cold iron, sold to a gladiator school in Capua with a price on his head, just another wretch destined to bleed for Rome's amusement. But Spartacus was no mere muscle. He was a vision, a mind ablaze with purpose, a man who saw beyond the chains to a future Rome could scarcely imagine. In 73 BC, when he sparked a rebellion from that grim school in Capua, Rome laughed. A slave uprising. A ragtag band of captives daring to challenge the mightiest empire on earth, they thought it would be crushed in weeks. How wrong they were. Spartacus wasn't staging a protest. He was forging an army, a force to shake the very pillars of the eternal city. Within 2 years, his banner rallied over 120,000 followers, men, women, and outcasts who swelled his ranks beyond the size of some Roman legions. But here's the hidden truth. the secret buried in the sands of time. Spartacus didn't train his followers like soldiers. He molded them as gladiators, warriors of the arena, and that was his genius. While Roman legions marched in lockstep, bound by rigid formation and uniformity, Spartacus unleashed chaos and cunning. He organized his fighters not by rank, but by role. Myrmilones with their heavy shields held the line like unyielding titans. Retiarii, armed with nets and tridents, danced on the flanks, ensnaring foes in deadly traps. It was theater turned to warfare, a spectacle of blood and brilliance, and it worked. Spartacus didn't merely win battles, he humiliated Rome. 8 legions, pride of the empire, fell before his unorthodox tactics, their banners trampled in the dust. Rome's senators trembled as this slave, this gladiator, turned their own weapons against them. He redistributed captured swords and shields, transformed the Colosseum's brutal hierarchy into a code of discipline, and taught his ragtag army to fight like legends born of the arena. Yet the true brilliance of Spartacus lay not in steel but in the mind. His strategy was psychological, a masterstroke of insight. He knew his men, gladiators who had stared death in the face under the Colosseum's blazing sun, feared nothing. They had endured the worst, survived the unendurable, and emerged unshaken. To Rome, this made them the most dangerous army alive, a force fueled by defiance and the raw will to be free. It took Crassus, Rome's wealthiest and most ruthless general, to stem the tide. With legions and gold at his command, he hunted Spartacus across the Italian peninsula. But even then, Spartacus refused to break. Every battle became a lesson, every captured resource a weapon in his arsenal. He turned Rome's strength against itself, a slave outwitting an empire. And yet, as a historian, I see more. Spartacus was a flame, a beacon that lit the way for others. His rebellion whispered of hope to the oppressed, a daring dream that freedom could be seized. But his story is only the beginning. For while Spartacus battled for liberty, 2 other gladiators, Priscus and Verus, stepped into the arena for something else entirely: honor. What drove these warriors to risk all under the crowd's roar? What bond tied them, and what clash would etch their names into eternity? The saga of the arena stretches beyond rebellion, weaving a tapestry of courage, loyalty, and a mystery that Rome could not silence. Step into this epic tale where a slave became a general, where the Colosseum's sands birthed legends. Will Spartacus defy Crassus to the end? What secrets fueled his unyielding spirit? And when Priscus and Verus face their fate, what will honor demand? Uncover the story Rome fought to bury, a journey of defiance and glory that will grip your heart and leave you yearning for the next chapter. It was meant to be just another spectacle, a bloody diversion to sate Rome's endless thirst for entertainment. In 80 AD, Emperor Titus unveiled the grandest stage the world had ever seen, the Colosseum, a marvel of stone and ambition. 50,000 spectators flooded its tiers, their roars echoing through the arches, hungry for blood, craving the thrill of the arena. 2 gladiators stepped into the sand. Priscus the Myrmillo, a towering figure of discipline, shielded and methodical, a master of unyielding defense. His foe Verus, a Thracian, swift and unpredictable, a whirlwind of flanking attacks, wielding his curved blade like a storm. In the brutal calculus of the Colosseum, the script was simple: one would triumph, one would fall. Normally, death was the only curtain call, but not this time. For hours they battled, a duel that defied the fleeting, frenzied clashes of the arena, where most fights ended in mere minutes. This was unheard of, a saga of endurance and brilliance. Their combat unfolded like a dance, every move a calculated thrust, every counter a stroke of genius. Even Emperor Titus, a man hardened by years of carnage, rose from his seat again and again, gripped by a restless awe. What made this clash extraordinary wasn't merely their stamina. It was their evolution, a testament to the human spirit under the Colosseum's merciless sun. Priscus began with the classic Myrmillo playbook, his heavy shield a wall of defiance, but Verus forced him to adapt, to improvise in the heat of battle. Varus, famed for his reckless aggression, reigned in his fury, studying Priscus like a tactician, probing for weakness with a cunning born of necessity. Halfway through, fate turned brutal. Priscus lost his shield, cast aside in the chaos. Varus's curved blade shattered, its fragments glinting in the dust. Yet neither faltered. Bare, bruised, and brilliant, they fought on, their bodies battered but their wills unbroken. Then something extraordinary unfolded. The crowd, so often obeying mob lusting for blood, fell silent. They were no longer watching a fight, they were witnessing art, a masterpiece carved in sweat and steel. When both warriors collapsed, exhausted but alive, the Colosseum held its breath. Emperor Titus, moved by a spectacle beyond reckoning, did the unthinkable. He declared both men winners. And then, in a gesture that echoed through the ages, he granted them freedom. It was a moment without precedent, the first time in recorded history that the arena's iron rules bent. Two gladiators bound by combat walked free together, their names etched into legend, a triumph that rewrote the Colosseum's bloody code. But as a historian, I see deeper currents in this tale. This was not just a clash of swords, but a mirror of Rome itself. Discipline meeting daring, tradition clashing with innovation, and two souls forging a bond stronger than the chains they'd once worn. Their story whispers of a truth. In the arena, glory could transcend death. And yet, what if I told you there was another gladiator, a man offered that same precious freedom, not once but 4 times, and each time he turned it down? Meet Flamma, a warrior whose tale defies belief. Why would a man reject liberty for the brutal sands? Was it pride, a vow, or a fire that burned brighter than freedom itself? Step deeper into the Colosseum's shadow, where legends rise and mysteries linger. The saga of Priscus and Varus is but a prelude. Flamma's story awaits, a riddle of honor and sacrifice that will seize your heart and leave you desperate to uncover what drove him to defy the greatest gift of all. In the shadow of Rome's mighty Colosseum, where blood and sand forged legends, one name echoed louder than all others: Flamma, the Syrian gladiator. A warrior unlike any the Eternal City had ever witnessed, fierce, cunning, and utterly unyielding. In an era where most gladiators perished before their 5th match, Flamma carved an impossible legacy. 34 battles. At 28, after 12 consecutive triumphs, Flamma stood before a roaring crowd of 50,000. The rudis, a wooden sword symbolizing freedom, was thrust toward him, a rare and coveted prize. The air thrummed with anticipation as he gazed at the blade, then at the sea of faces chanting his name. And then, with a shake of his head, he turned away. Freedom, the dream of every slave, was not his. He stayed. Why? What kind of man turns down liberty not once, not twice, but 4 times? Flamma had unraveled a truth few dared to grasp. Outside the arena, he'd be just another ex-slave, a shadow in a society that scorned his kind. But within these walls, he was unstoppable, a god of the sand, wielding power no free man could claim. He found not escape but mastery. 2 years later, his legend grew. In a single afternoon, he felled 3 opponents, their blades no match for his skill. The emperor himself rose, offering the rudis once more. Flamma's response, delivered in flawless Latin, silenced the crowd. "This is my place." His voice carried the weight of a man who knew his dominion. The 3rd time, the Colosseum trembled as he shattered the rudis before their eyes, splintering the symbol of freedom into dust. He didn't want release. He craved legacy, a name to echo through the ages, unbowed by time or empire. And so he fought on, a titan among men. By 35, a veteran in a world where few survived past youth, Flamma's brilliance shone brighter still. With the wealth of his victories, he could have bought a quiet life. Instead, he built a gladiator school, pouring his riches into freeing others. He wove a brotherhood of warriors, former slaves who revered him as a father, their loyalty forged in the crucible of his example. To Flamma, the arena was no prison, it was a kingdom, and he its unchallenged king. Beyond the blade, his genius burned. He crafted new training methods, taught the art of predicting an opponent's strike, and proved a gladiator's mind could outmatch Rome's elite warriors. His secrets rippled through the sands, shaping a generation. Yet, as Flamma ruled the human realm, whispers tell of another, a gladiator whose gaze turned beyond the arena, daring to conquer nature itself. What drove Flamma to defy freedom? What power fueled his reign? Step closer, listener, and unravel the saga of a man who turned a cage into a crowned Flamma, the eternal flame of Rome. In the blood-soaked sands of the Colosseum, where men clashed with men, one warrior towered above the rest. Not as a Murmillo or Secutor, but as a Bestiarius, a master of the Venetians, the brutal animal hunts that thrilled Rome. His name was Carpophorus, and he was no mere hunter. He was a phenomenon, a force of nature who turned the arena into his stage and beasts into his legacy. Picture the scene. In a single breathtaking day, Carpophorus felled 1,000 creatures. Yes, 1,000 lions from the wilds of Africa, tigers stalking from Asia, bears roaring from Germania, and more. Rhinos, leopards, boars, bulls, wave after relentless wave. But this was no reckless slaughter. Each kill was a masterpiece, executed with the precision of a surgeon's blade. Born not of Rome but of barbarian blood, captured in African campaigns, Carpophorus brought with him a tribal hunter's wisdom that left the empire's finest in awe. He studied his foes, decoding the prowl of a lion, the feint of a tiger, the blind spot of a rhino. He mastered their pressure points, the strikes that brought instant death, the subtle signs of hesitation. With intimidation, posture, and a chilling psychological dominance, he bewildered predators, freezing them for a fleeting second, then struck swift and unerring. Carpophorus didn't just kill. He choreographed death, each movement a silent lesson in control, each victory a testament to his uncanny skill. A genius beyond the blade, he crafted his own system, classifying beasts by speed, power, and intelligence, devising custom tactics for each. A leopard's agility met a trapper's cunning, a rhino's might faced a dancer's grace. His mind was as lethal as his spear. And the reward? In one day, Carpophorus earned more than a Roman citizen could dream of in 20 years. The Colosseum paid richly, 500 denarii for a lion, 800 for a tiger, 1,200 for a rhino, wealth that echoed his unmatched prowess. Whispers say he once stared down a charging bull, unflinching, and brought it to its knees with a single thrust, the crowd erupting in a frenzy. Who was this man, this barbarian who tamed monsters as Rome watched, breathless? How did a captive outsider bend nature to his will? Step into the arena, listener, and uncover the saga of Carpophorus, the beastmaster who turned the wild into his dominion, leaving a trail of awe and blood that Rome would never forget. Spartacus may be the face etched in history, the blazing symbol of the great gladiator rebellion, but behind the legend stood a mind of unmatched brilliance. Crixus, a Gallic warrior turned Murmillo gladiator. This fierce strategist brought to the uprising what Spartacus could not, military logistics, the sinew and bone of a revolution. In the shadowed cells of the gladiator school at Capua, the two forged their plan in secret. Spartacus dreamed of freedom, a vision to rally the masses, but Crixus built the foundation. He organized supplies, food, weapons, hope. He designed escape routes, winding paths that let 90,000 rebels slip like shadows across the Italian peninsula. His communication systems, whispered codes and silent signals, bound a ragtag force into a coordinated storm. Before the arena claimed him, Crixus had fought in Gallic armies, honing tactics Rome wouldn't face again until Julius Caesar's campaigns decades later. He unleashed wedge formations to split enemy lines, ambushes that struck from the dusk, and hybrid attacks blending gladiator styles. Murmillos clashing, Retiarii darting, a dance of death born in the sand. His genius shone brightest in a radical innovation, the first rank-based military system for rebel gladiators. Retiarii scouted as reconnaissance, their nets and speed piercing the fog of war. Secutors stood as heavy infantry, unyielding walls of muscle and blade. Thracians rode as light cavalry, swift and deadly. This was no mere rebellion, it was a professional army, cloaked in rags, defying an empire. When Roman soldiers fell into their grasp, Crixus turned the tables, retraining them in the brutal school of the Colosseum. He instilled discipline, survival tactics, and a gladiator's creed: fight to live, kill to lead. His rebels didn't just endure, they dominated, forged in the crucible of his vision. His final act was a calculated sacrifice, a blaze of glory against Praetor Lucius Gellius. Leading 30,000 men, Crixus launched a diversion to shield Spartacus's main force, charging into battle with unrelenting fury. He fell surrounded by Roman corpses, a testament to a leader who fought from the front to his last breath. His death was no tragedy, it was a turning point. Without Crixus, the rebellion lost its structure, its dream of a gladiator kingdom in the Alps crumbling like sand. Yet the saga of the gladiators endured, evolving beyond the battlefield. One man, Tetraites, saw the arena not as a grave but a goldmine, a stage for business and brilliance. Who was Crixus, the mind that armed a revolution? How did a slave forge an army to shake Rome's foundations? Step closer, listener, and unravel the tale of a warrior whose legacy of strategy and sacrifice still haunts the echoes of the Colosseum. Long before influencers and sponsorships, there was Tetraites, a murmillo by discipline, a visionary by nature. More than a gladiator, he was Rome's first personal brand, a pioneer who saw the Colosseum not as a pit of death but as a grand stage. While others battled for freedom, Tetraites fought for identity, turning every clash into a campaign, every victory a chapter in his legend. His armor told the story. Custom crafted, his shield gleamed with gold and silver, the grip of his gladius lined with ivory from Africa's distant shores. His helmet, crowned with feathers dyed in exotic hues from the east, blazed against the sand. Tetraites didn't blend in, he stood apart, forging a legacy with every step. Each fight was a performance choreographed for the crowd, calculated moves, dramatic poses, a moment of silence after triumph. He wasn't just winning, he was captivating. The Roman elite took notice. Pottery bearing his likeness flew from marketplace stalls. Children swung toy swords branded with his name. Even perfumes carried his image, a scent of glory for the masses. Tetraites pioneered commerce in combat, licensing his name, crafting replicas of his gear, and reaping royalties. The first gladiator to turn fame into fortune, his merchandise a craze across the empire. But his vision stretched beyond the arena. He delved into Greek philosophy, mastered Latin rhetoric, and learned Roman etiquette, arming himself with intellect. At high society banquets, he traded politics with senators and poetry with aristocrats, shattering the divide between gladiator and citizen. A slave by law, he dined as an equal, his charm as sharp as his blade. With this power, Tetraites reshaped the world of his brothers in arms. He negotiated better treatment, improved housing, medical care, higher quality food, lifting the lives of fellow gladiators. Even amphitheaters bent to his influence. Special viewing platforms rose for his fans, an early VIP experience born of his genius. He didn't just fight in the arena, he redefined what it meant to watch, crafting a spectacle for the ages. Yet as revolutionary as Tetraites was, a wilder tale loomed. What happens when an emperor craves the sand and the sword? Step into the saga of Commodus, where imperial madness meets the roar of the Colosseum. Who was Tetraites, the gladiator who branded history? How did he turn blood into a legacy of gold? Lean closer, listener, and unravel the story of a man who fought not just to win, but to be remembered. He ruled the Roman Empire, a crown upon his head, yet Commodus craved more. Not content with the throne, he donned armor, not symbolic, but the real sweat-stained gear of a gladiator. No ceremonial charades for him. He demanded actual battles, or so he proclaimed, stepping onto the Colosseum's sacred sand. Rome's greatest stage became his personal fantasy, where he fought 735 official matches and never lost. Not once. How the game was rigged. His opponents, stripped of skill, faced him disarmed, their weapons dulled, some forbidden even to strike. Imagine the most powerful man on earth cloaked in a warrior's guise while true fighters bowed to his whim or faced the axe of execution. The crowd roared, but the sand hid a hollow truth. Shockingly, he made them pay. Each of Commodus's appearances drained over 1,000,000 sesterces from the empire's coffers, a sum dwarfing a Roman soldier's 96 sesterce yearly wage, one show equaling 1,100 years of military pay. Higher taxes bled the people, political positions sold like market wares, the treasury gutted, all to fund an emperor's gladiator cosplay. He collected gear from every class, Murmillo, Thracian, Secutor, even Bestiarius, some forged of solid gold encrusted with jewels. A private arena rose within his palace, complete with cages for exotic beasts and luxury quarters for sparring partners, a theater of his own making. The Senate, too, was ensnared. Forced to attend, they clapped, they cheered, never daring to frown. Boredom could be branded treason, a glance inviting death. Commodus believed he honored gladiators by fighting beside them, yet his charade mocked their blood-earned valor, turning sacrifice into spectacle. But his end came not in the arena's blaze. Strangled in his own bath, he fell to a wrestler-turned assassin, a quiet, ignoble death for a man who craved roaring applause. Perhaps the final lesson rings clear. Power without purpose destroys itself, a hollow echo in Rome's grandest stage. Now, having met emperors, tacticians, artists, and beast-slayers, a question burns. What did these gladiators truly teach us? Step closer, listener, and unravel the saga of Commodus, the emperor who played at glory only to drown in his own delusion. What if gladiators were more than warriors, their blades flashing through sweat and steel? What if they were early entrepreneurs, trailblazers of branding, strategy, and influence, forging empires from the sands of the arena? Beneath the clash of combat, that's precisely what they became. Consider Tetraites, the Murmillo maestro. He licensed his name, sold replicas of his dazzling armor, and spun his likeness into a business empire. Long before Rome formalized personal branding, he grasped supply and demand, turning the roar of the crowd into a marketplace of glory. His image adorned pottery and perfumes, a pioneer's vision etched in gold. Then there's Flamma, the unyielding Syrian. He shunned luxury, channeling his winnings to invest in people, purchasing freedom for younger gladiators, building loyalty and weaving a network of allies. He didn't just survive the arena, he reshaped it, a shrewd architect of hope and power, his legacy a testament to purpose over personal gain. Carpophorus, the Beastmaster, transformed the Bestiarius role into a calculated spectacle. He crafted a classification grid for animals, speed, power, cunning, pairing each with tailored strategies. This was operational genius, blending military precision, biology, and showmanship, turning chaos into a multi-tiered triumph that captivated Rome. Even Spartacus and Crixus birthed a startup rebellion. They structured roles, Retiarii scouting, Secutors anchoring, Thracians charging, managed logistics, trained recruits, and instituted promotion systems. It wasn't chaos. It was a movement, a daring venture that shook an empire's foundations with entrepreneurial fire. What tied them together? They transformed limits into leverage, slavery into skill, death into dignity, fight into future. These men weren't mere performers, they were institutions. The schools they fought in became centers of knowledge, passing down tactics and grit. Their weapons turned into tools of narrative, carving stories into the sand. Their names echoed beyond empires, ringing through time. Their lessons endure, whispering wisdom from ancient arenas. But the tale isn't finished. How do these gladiators, 7 of the greatest to ever tread the Colosseum, still shape